Well, good day and welcome back. Today I want to talk about trainers and, well, specifically how to find one because even though I encourage people to learn how to train their own horses, and I think in a perfect world we all would train our own horses, in reality that is not going to happen. There's always going to be a job for good trainers, so I'm not trying to put anybody out of work. But it's really hard to find a good trainer, which is one of the reasons I learned to do my own training. But that's another story in itself. I want to give you a few little tips on finding a good trainer. And, well, the things to look for really hard. The red flags to run away from, well, that's a little easier. I can give you that one. But to start with, proximity. You want somebody that is close enough to you that you can drive out to them to check out the facilities beforehand, before you even take your horse there. And also, very important that you can go out and check on your horse while it's there during the course of its training. And I'll elaborate a little more on that in a bit, but finding a good horseman is really hard. They're rather elusive creatures, and it's mostly word of mouth. So unless you know somebody that's already had several horses trained by somebody, it's going to be really hard to get in contact with anybody that knows anything that could maybe train a horse. And that makes it particularly difficult because, like I said, most good horse trainers, they have a reputation in the horse world, and they get around word of mouth. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that there's other ones out there that aren't any good. I want to caution you there a little bit because there's going to be times, especially in this day and age, even good horse trainers will use the internet for advertising, that sort of thing, have websites, all kinds of stuff. So just because somebody's advertising, that doesn't mean they're bad. That just means they could be just starting out, trying to build up a client base, or maybe they just relocated to a different area and need to reestablish their client base because nobody knows them yet. All things taken into consideration. So just because somebody is relatively new to the business doesn't mean they're not any good. Just because they're new to that area also does not necessarily mean they're not any good. Give them a chance, check them out, but using all the same parameters that you would use for checking out anybody as far as a trainer goes. And one of the things you're going to want to attempt is to get references. Now, that's not always going to be easy to do because in many cases, like for example, if somebody is relocated, maybe they lost all their contact information to the people that were former clients. Maybe they've changed the number, relocated themselves. There's a number of reasons. And there's, of course, the common phenomenon that even if the trainer does an absolutely excellent job, if the individual takes a horse home and later on has problems with it that are absolutely no fault of the trainer, they are still going to guaranteed blame it on the trainer and therefore not give them a good recommendation, even if they are perfectly okay. On the other hand, guys that are just starting out or just relocated, they might not have many recommendations, references. Just because they don't write them off. Take it a little step further. Ask for them. If you can get them, great. If not, don't write them off. Take it a step further and check things out. Also, one little word of advice too when it comes to references. Occasionally, you will get people that will give a good reference that honestly don't have a clue what they're talking about. They saw the trainer ride the horse once, figure they did a really good job. They don't even bother to mention they haven't ridden that horse in 6 months since they got it home. So references, take them with a grain of salt. They can be good, bad, or not at all. Next thing, most important, is access to facilities, both prior to and during the training process. If they at any time restrict you or block you from going out to see the facilities, walk away. Don't even bother. Another thing that would be stop the conversation right away if they give you a price and a timeline and say that they are going to accomplish exactly this, that, or the other thing for this amount of money and in this amount of time. Stop your conversation right there because in the real world, things don't work that way. It might take 3 months to achieve the same that you did with another horse in 3 weeks. They're all different. There's no two alike. I've said that many times, and the same is true of training. Before you even take your horse out there, go out and take a look. Take a look around at the facilities. Take a look and, the condition of the other horses. See how they're treated. See how they react around humans. Make sure they've all got food and water. I've heard all kinds of horror stories of horses that were not properly fed during training. Some do it because if they starve the horse, it makes it more compliant. And there's some very big names that do that too that I won't mention. But it is a concern, and it does happen. And I've heard countless horror stories of it. And so check the facilities out ahead of time. If at all possible, ahead of time, before you even take your horse out there, watch the individual working with horses. See how they treat the horses. Are they, quick-tempered? Are they very gentle? Do they understand the horse? There's a lot of things to watch. If they don't treat that horse the way you would want your horse to be treated, no, don't accept that. You are the employer. They are working for you. You're paying, and I don't know what the rates are these days, but it can easily cost you thousands of dollars for training. So for that kind of money, you better be getting your money's worth in a service that is worthwhile and isn't going to mess the horse up worse than it was before they got there. Because I actually have one that has been through 3 trainers. Between the cost of the trainers and the cost of transport, for one of them was actually into another country even. I can't even imagine how much they spent, and a lot of that could have been saved because, like I said, close proximity, transport costs are going to cost a lot less. You want to be able to go and check the place out before you send your horse there, guaranteed. That is one of those things. And even once the horse does get out there, if you're reasonably satisfied with the way the individual works with horses and the facilities where it's going to be kept, during the training process, absolutely take part, if not at least observe what is going on so that you know exactly what your horse is responding to, what does your horse know, what is it learning, how are they teaching it. All this stuff is critical because whether it's 30, 60, 90 days, when the training ends and the horse goes home, the training doesn't really end. You are to continue that training quite literally for years after that. And you have to know how to get almost the same results out of that horse as the trainer. You don't necessarily have to be as good as them and to the point where you can actually train a horse, but you have to know enough that you can continue the horse's education once it gets home. That's very important. So taking part, if at all possible, essential. If they don't even want you watching, they're hiding something, red flag, walk away. Don't even go there in the first place. If you don't find these things out till later on, load up your horse in your trailer and get out of there as quick as you can if they're trying to hide something at all. If if they aren't completely open door to you, then there's something that they don't want you to see. And sometimes it's just the fact that some horse owners really don't have a realistic expectation of what training is. And they don't understand that sometimes it gets a little ugly. It's not always a pretty thing. Sometimes when the horse gets a little worried and it doesn't know what's going on, you can get some rather volatile reactions. So you got to be realistic there. But on the case of realistic, be realistic in your expectations. Just because you saw a colt starting competition where they were riding horses around an arena in 6 hours does not mean that it should be done in that length of time. That creates horribly unrealistic expectations in people, which really puts a lot of pressure on trainers. That is not fair because there's absolutely no way you can properly train a horse in that length of time. And people are like, well, if I can do it in 6 hours, a month should be enough. No, I'm sorry, it is not enough. Even 3 months, which is the most that most guys will take, even that might not be enough. And if it comes to the end of the 3 months and your trainer says to you, look, your horse is doing okay, but there's some sticky things that they're going to take a little longer, you better be willing to bite the bullet and pay the extra amount, whether it's for a couple of weeks or even another whole month of training to iron out those things. Because horses don't wear watches, they don't read calendars. There's no set schedule on how long it should take to do anything with a horse. So, there are some trainers that actually It's mandatory you actually take part in the training, and they're good people. But due to the fact that a lot of them have had poor owners that really just get in the way, a lot of them actually will say, no, I don't want you around. I understand why, but that's still talk nice to them, explain why you want to be there, and be as polite and unobtrusive as possible when you're there. Like I said, even if you can't take part in the training sessions, at least observe. Learn what that horse knows, how it's cued, and how things go. And it'll make your life a lot easier in the end. Very important also, like I said, if there's anything blocking you in any way, shape, or form, walk away. If you see anything you don't like, walk away. You may end up having to pay for, at very least, some board or something, depending on whether it's their facilities or somebody else's. Irrelevant whether you should still have access, by the way. Doesn't matter whose facilities they are, you should still be allowed access as owner of the horse. And there should be no question about that. And you should make it very clear ahead of time in writing. Get a contract. Please get a contract in writing. Duplicate copies, keep it in a safe place. Hopefully you're never ever going to need it. But if there's any of this he said, she said, this is not what we agreed to sort of thing, you can pull out that piece of paper and say, no, we got it in writing right here. And this is what we agreed to. This is what it was going to cost for the boarding. This is what it was going to cost for feed, for training, for this, that, everything. And this is what the expectations are. This is what my expectations were. This is what you promised me. And if you don't get what you're promised, do not feel obligated to pay. I don't know what the legalities are in your area. You'll need a lawyer to sort that one out. I'm not going to give legal advice. All I'm going to say is, if it's like anything else, you pay for what if you're expecting a service for a certain amount of money, you better get that service. And you should know in advance. And that's why I say it's very important to get it in writing so that you know in advance what you're getting for that money. Because, I'm not going to walk into a grocery store and say, here's $800, fill up my grocery cart. I'll trust you without knowing what they're going to give me. No, I'm going to end up with a lot of things I don't want, or maybe not the things I do want. So know in advance what you're getting. Find out what those services are. And if you don't have a horse already, or even if you already have one and you're thinking, well, I'm going to send it off to a trailer next month. No, it might actually take you 6 months just to find somebody. And, don't hesitate to take your time. If it takes 6 months, that's okay. Don't expect to find somebody within a day or two or even a week. It may happen. You might get lucky, find somebody good. But if you don't have all the right connections, it could very easily take 6 months. And if that's how long it takes, go for it. Don't be shy about, paying the money or taking the time and taking part in proper training, because as a horse owner, it's your obligation to make sure that it's done right. And considering that the horse can live for quite a few years, it's going to be money well spent in the long run. And if you don't make sure it's done right, then quite frankly, and I hate to say it, this might sound a little rude, but if you don't make sure it's done right, you are a negligent horse owner. So take your time, spend the money, spend the time, get a good trainer, one you can trust, one with an open door policy, and by all means, as often as possible, take part in the sessions, observe as much as you can, and find out what is happening, how the horse is being treated, and find out what it's learning, and try and learn as much as the horse does. That's really important. Have a good day.